Welcome back to the Peanut Butter and Mountain podcast. Today we're going to be getting into why I think every snowboarder should become a splitboarder or a skier should be into ski touring. I kind of want to list the reasons why I think this is a great idea for people that might be listening to this channel or this podcast, because what I have experienced, I guess, back in the day, back when I didn't discover splitboarding per se, was every time the winter would hit, I would run out of adventures, right? And so I want to kind of take people back to where I was at in 2019 and everything prior. So basically every time that the winter would come up, I would go from adventuring all of this time in the summer and being gone almost every single weekend to basically not doing anything in the winter. And probably people can relate to that because you go from this great weather to just really crappy weather, super cold, hard to drive in, all of that stuff, right? And so every time that the winter would come, I would essentially think that my adventures would be over. And I would be, like I said, you'd go from traveling all summer and then it would just suddenly stop. Now, what I would do in the past was I would typically get a resort pass for my snowboard. And but then I kind of went a couple times and I just did not have fun. And the reason I didn't have fun was because, number one, it took a long way to get up there. There was a ton of traffic to get up there. It was expensive as hell. And then you had to wait in line at the lifts. And so in my head, I just kind of threw out snowboarding for a couple years. I just didn't even go. And I just didn't think it was worth it. And so it wasn't until it was actually 2021. And I remember this. I had heard about splitboarding. This was still kind of during the pandemic, that type of thing. And a splitboard got listed for sale at this place in Oregon, and I immediately went over there and picked it up. And the guy was selling it at a pretty good discount, actually at a shop. And I don't know why he was doing it because it was a flagship model. But I scored it for pretty decent amount of money on my part. And ever since then, 2021, every winter, 2021 winter, 2022 winter, 2023 winter, now 2024 has been remarkably different. I mean, probably 100% different. And so I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about why that is. And if somebody's kind of on the fence about splitboarding or getting into ski touring, I think this episode will probably push you over the edge into getting into it. Because now most people that are going to be listening to this, the critics at least of splitboarding versus a resort, are going to say that it's so much more dangerous to go splitboarding than it is to ride at a resort. And honestly, I think that is one of the reasons why. That's also another reason why a resort turns me off a little bit, is because it is very controlled and I don't feel like I'm having an adventure. Splitboarding to me is all about the adventure. But my response to that danger factor would be the fact that you can literally have a splitboard for your entire life and never go into the backcountry. And the reason is because you can go to do uphill routes at these different resorts for free, or at some places in Colorado for a small fee. So you don't even have to touch avalanche terrain. You don't even have to get avalanche gear if that's all you're doing. And that would be perfect. Now, that's not me, but that is something that somebody that is getting into the sport and doesn't want the danger factor, but still wants some of the things I'm going to be listing about reasons why you want to get into splitboarding, that is something to consider. Now, people that are in it to try to get more of an adventure, yes, you need to go to avalanche classes. Yes, you need avalanche gear. And on high avalanche days, you're going to be finding me uphilling at a resort or maybe still riding at a resort. The one biggest drawback, I think, with splitboarding, besides the danger factor, if that's what you choose to do, is that you're not getting most of your time is going to be going uphill, obviously. I enjoy that because I enjoy staying in shape, and that is one of the reasons why I love it that we'll get into here in a second. But yeah, most of your time is going to be going uphill. This was really blatant to me in last season because I would go with some of my splitboarding buddies, and while I would smoke them on the uphill, my uphill game was great. Their downhill game was better than mine, and it was very apparent. And that was because they basically rode the resort multiple times that year, whereas I went one time. Otherwise, all my time was spent on the uphill. So I do still think there is a utility in resorts because you still need to get your legs hammered on the downhill and you really need to get those reps, especially if you're new. But if I still had the choice of if somebody said I could only do one thing for the rest of my life, it would 100% be splitboarding. No doubt about it. And kind of how I'm going to probably base my stuff going forward is I this year I got a season pass to Keystone, which I think was a mistake for me. I'll tell about that story in a bit, but I think it was kind of my ignorant tax for moving to a different place. Every time you move to a place or every time you get into a new sport, there's always what's called an ignorant tax. So you're going to be paying either with time or money or both when you first start into something because you're just ignorant to a lot of the things that are happening within that sport or that destination. So anyway, I have about 3 downhill days that I have done today or this year that have amounted to way more downhill than I have done with my splitboard. So I do think that is still important. Moving forward, I'll probably buy maybe a 3-day pass or something. I don't know, something like that. It still hurts me to do that because it's so effing expensive. But again, if you want to be good at this sport, you have to get that downhill practice. So anyway, going back to kind of the critics of splitboarding. So one way to get around the danger factor too a little bit better is to do a lot of your adventure splitboarding in the spring. Now you can still do it in the winter, especially when there's days of low AVI danger. We've done multiple days this year so far in the winter, just being very smart about it, doing low angle terrain. But springtime is the best time to ride some of these more adventure lines or these bigger lines, just because for the most part, the snow is a lot more cohesive and a lot more stable than it would be in the winter. So that's always an option. So that springtime where it's kind of, again, shoulder season and you can't really go backpacking because you're going to get stuck in the snow. You can't really go climbing because it's super cold. So splitboarding fits in that category very well. So I wanted to get into kind of why I love to do splitboarding over a resort. And so number one is that it gives you adventures, which was what we've been talking about, especially even in the winter. Now, what's really cool about this, especially living in near Colorado right now, is that there is a bunch of 14ers that are super easy to do. And one of my goals is to click off all of these 14ers, right? But some of these easier 14ers actually have really fun descent routes on them. So if you're thinking, I think it's Democrat, Lincoln, all those easy ones that would be just kind of walk up 14ers. This is going to spice it up a little bit. So you can actually go up them and then come down them on a splitboard or on a snowboarding route. So it livens up those maybe a little bit more boring 14ers and it gives you some good experience descending from 14,000 feet. So I'm super stoked about that. I got a bunch of 14ers that I have that I want to hit again in the spring, going back to when the conditions are a little more stable. And then number 2 is it obviously keeps you in shape. Most of your time splitboarding is going to be going on the uphill. I mean, 95% of the time. And what that does for me is it keeps me in shape all year round. Instead of having to try and get back into shape in the spring or the summer when the weather's nicer out and I can start running outside a lot more again or trail running, this is doing the same thing. It's a weight-bearing activity. You're gliding. And so you're actually using a little bit different muscles than you would be if you're running or if you're hiking, especially in your hip flexors. So it's a great way to also periodize your training so you're not just running all year. Now, I know people that love running all year. It's not me. I will run when the weather's nice, when I can get on the trails. I don't want to run just for running's sake. I like to periodize my training so I don't get burnt out of one thing, and also I don't get overuse injuries. I was with a gal the other day that is a big runner, and we were splitboarding, and she was kicking my ass on the uphill, but she was talking about overuse injuries, and she's young, 26. So she's already getting overuse injuries from running, but she just loves it, and she keeps doing it all winter long. Kudos to her, but that's just not me, and I don't want to get those overuse injuries. I want to spread out my physical capabilities throughout different body parts and through different activities. And then the next one is that although that splitboarding is a heavy investment at first, it's still going to be cheap compared to the resort. And so the way I think about that is every year your investment is going to be worth more than it would be to keep buying a pass at a resort or keep getting stuck in line at a resort or having to drive up there. And really the investment kind of comes down to, you can still use most of the gear that you would use at a resort, you can kind of use for splitboarding. You don't want to use your resort jacket. It's probably going to be too heavy unless it's super cold. And you're going to probably have to get a few different things of gear, but you can use the same gloves, the same hats, things like that. But every year that you have this splitboarding gear and that you keep going splitboarding, that investment's going to pay off, especially if you're not you're not getting a season pass or for $1,200 here in Colorado, or you're not paying $250 a day, which is just insane to go on a resort. Insane. So you're not doing all of that. So every year that you have this investment, it's going to keep paying off. There's going to be more money in your pocket. So yes, that's everybody's qualm too with splitboarding. Oh, it's so expensive to get into. Yeah, but look at how much you're paying every year for a freaking season pass to sit in line. And that's my next thing. There is no lines. You can, if you want to go uphilling somewhere, typically you're not going to be stuck in traffic to get up to the resort, battling for parking spots, battling lift lines. To put this into perspective, we went up to Keystone last week and we skied there Friday, which was fine. But then on Saturday, we had actually stayed the night in Denver. Now it's an hour, I think 35-minute drive from Denver to Keystone where we were at. So we left at 6:00. We didn't get on snow until almost 5 hours later. 5 hours later. It was about 11 a.m. by the time we got on snow. And that's because we battled traffic up there for 3 hours when it's normally an hour 35. We had to find parking. Once we found parking, there was a shuttle we had to wait for. We skipped the shuttle, so we just walked to the resort. Then once we got to the resort, we had to fight the lift lines. So people listening to this that are probably seasoned resort people, they're probably like, well, don't go on a weekend. Well, that's true. But most people are probably that's probably when they're going to go. Unless you want to take a day off from work and blah, 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 blah. You're still going to be fighting some lines though. And so, boy, I will say after that day last week, I got done at the resort and I just thought I can never do that again. I will never go to a resort on a weekend again. I'll tell you that. In good weather, we'll never do it again. I don't care if they offer me a free pass. I wouldn't do it. The gal I took, she was paying $200 some bucks for that one day to sit in line and battle traffic. And it was just stressful. It wasn't fun. It was fun. It was still fun once you got on snow, but it still just wasn't. It's not my idea. It's not my idea of a very good time. What it felt like to me was Disney World. I think those are the main things that I really, really love about splitboarding. And the fact that I think the number one thing is that you're still getting an adventure in the winter and the cold weather, and you have to learn new skills. You don't really need any skills at a resort. You need to know how to ride, but that's it. Splitboarding, you still need to know how to read terrain. You need to know about avalanches. You're going to be out exploring different places in the snow that maybe you go in the summer, but now it has snow on it, so it's totally different. It's so much more of an adventure, and that's something that I am definitely looking for when I get into the winter or the spring. So if you're interested about learning more about splitboarding, I'm going to link a bunch of different videos that I have done in the description below. And these are going to be mainly on YouTube. So if you're listening on the podcast, on Spotify, that will link out to YouTube. And if you're listening on YouTube, that'll just take you right there. So that's my spiel today. Probably made a lot of resort people mad, but I don't care. It's ridiculous the amount of money that they charge for a one-day ticket for somebody. I mean, imagine if you're just trying to learn the sport. They are really making it exclusive to just a certain group of people that can really afford that. I don't know where I see snowboarding and skiing going in the next 5-10 years, especially with just the inflation and I don't see where it's a sustainable model to charge people that much money. But you know what? There always will be people that will probably pay that. So who am I kidding? All right. See you for the next one.